Hi, it's Bronwyn from Rap. So the vocals in reggaeton can be really slick and polished or quite edgy and gritty. It's actually really song dependent. But one of the big things in reggaeton for vocals is pitch correction. Now, you can either use the pitch corrector for the special effect that it creates or simply for tone. Again, it's really song specific. And in this instance, I've used the pitch correction, as you can see over here, just to keep those vocals nice and tight throughout the song in terms of tone and key. With the drums being mixed so loud and so forward, you can easily lose the vocals in the mix. So you need a really nice, big, heavy compression on the vocals in reggaeton, even some settings that you would use for rap vocals. So when you have some time, check out the tutorial, the blog on mixing out rap vocals at raponline.net, and you can have a look, see the settings that I've got here on this lead vocal part in the reggaeton track. And I've chosen this particular compressor because of its tone and how it really adds some color to the signal. I've dialed in a nice colored sound on this vocal, and I really like what it does in the mix as well. For lead vocal ambience, it can be quite tricky in reggaeton. I usually use delay instead of reverb to achieve space and width within my mixes. But with so many rhythm elements happening in reggaeton, those delays on a vocal track can really end up causing a lot of issues. So if you are going to go for a delay, then use straight quarter notes and use some EQ to tidy up the top and the bottom, roll off some of those frequencies that aren't needed. But another thing you could do is actually automate that delay so you only hear those delays when the vocal is resting between phrases. Reverb works really nicely to contrast with all the other rhythmic elements to deal with, but you don't really want something that's going to be warm and too wet. You can try a plate reverb with a 1.5 to 2.5 second setting. I prefer to use a spring reverb. It brings in a bit of character, and to spice up the sound a bit, you can add some modulation like chorus or phaser or something like that. But I've decided to utilize a really nice old vintage spring reverb. If you're dealing with your ad-libs and your backing vocals in reggaeton, there are a few tried and tested and really popular methods to get a good result. You can use slight distortion, that EQ and telephone filtering, and lots of reverb. But because these are such popular techniques, it can be a little bit same old, boring. So try think of ways to make things a little bit more unique and interesting. And for me, I really like the use of the vocoder for some synth backing vocals. Try it out. It's a really creative tool to use in reggaeton vocals. And again, at raponline.net, I've got a very cool tutorial and blog on using the vocoder. And then on my main stereo bus, I like to use a mix bus compressor. I really like the Waves SSL compressor. It's just a compression that I'm used to. I've worked on those large format consoles, and I really like the sound. I love the way that it glues and gels my mix together as well. Then for the top end, I like to add a little bit of brightness, especially in reggaeton, just to bring everything nice and forward. But I don't like things to be too hard or too brittle or too bright. So I choose a vintage tube EQ instead. I still get that nice brightness, but without it being overly bright and harsh. You can have a look at some of the settings here that I've got for my master bus. Then I've got a limiter here to tame those peaks. It's very light. You can have a look at my settings. It's just simply there to manage any peak levels. And then, of course, the multimeter, which is a vital tool. I love the multimeter in the Logic Pro X DAW. I've got a goniometer, I've got an analyzer, and then of course I've got my true peak and RMS meters and my lifts meters. I have a correlation meter all in one package, and it just helps me to make sure that I'm meeting those broadcast level standards. And another really useful tool to have is the gain tool. I like to swap my mixes in and out of stereo and mono just to make sure that everything is sounding right and nice and well balanced without it being too wide or even too narrow. It just really gives me a good sense of what is happening in the mix. So that's a really cool thing. And there you go. That's my approach to mixing out vocal reggaeton. I'm going to play out the track and I'll bypass some of the effects so that you can get a really good idea of what's going on as well. And thanks for watching. I'll catch you again in the next video.